Today we'll talk about resistors in series. A series connection is one in which all the current entering one point has to flow through to the next point. There are no options or junctions between the two elements we're talking about. So for resistors, it means that all the current entering R1 has to go into R2. And as such, the current has to be the same through both of them. Because again, we can't build up charge or lose charge in the device itself. So every coulomb per second that enters this, passes through this one, has to pass through this one. And of course, there would be a voltage drop between points A and B, but it would be simply the voltage drop across 1 plus voltage drop across 2. This is going to sound vaguely familiar because it's going to be a similar reasoning to how we did the capacitors, although you're going to see the results are a little bit different. Since the current is the same and the voltage adds, we can find what's called an equivalent resistance, a single resistor that, when swapped in, would look identical from the point of view of the battery that it's attached to. So in our actual circuit, the voltage across it is V1 plus V2. In the equivalent circuit, it's the current times R equivalent. So V here, V1 is IR1, and V2 is IR2, and so the voltage drop across it is the current times the sum of the resistors. But of course, these voltages are the same. They're providing, the whole idea is that we're providing the same voltage. We don't want to know that there are new resistors there. And so I times the equivalent resistance is I times the sum of the resistance, and the I is the same, so we can cancel it out. Meaning the equivalent resistance is just the sum of the two. And after all that work, the simple rule to remember is that resistors in series simply stack. They just add up. If you put something in the way that's hard for the current to flow, and then you put something even harder downstream, it gets even harder for the current to flow. So there we go. So the potential difference across the 10 ohm resistor is how much? Well, we start off with that the equivalent resistance is going to be their sum. Going to be 10 ohms plus 5 ohms, or of course 15 ohms. And then we know that the EMF is going to be the current times that equivalent resistance, where we assume that there's some current I that comes out. So we can figure out that I is the EMF over the equivalent resistance, which is 30 volts over 15 ohms, or 2 amps. And then we're going to say that the voltage across the 10 is I times its resistance, so 2 amps times 10 ohms, which is 20 volts. That was a little laborious. We could also look at it this way, that since V equals IR, the voltage is going to divide in such a way as to be in the ratio of 2 to 1. That from here to here we'll have 2 to 1 for the voltages, but we know together they're 30, so it has to be 20 and 10. All right, this says find the current in the circuit and answer in amps. So we assume there is some current. Leaves the battery, goes through the resistors, comes back. This is a series setup, of course, and so we know that the equivalent resistance is going to be the sum of all the resistors, so it's going to be 15 ohm plus 4 ohm plus 8 ohm, which is 27 ohms. And we're then going to know that the EMF, of course, is going to provide that current. So we can say that the current is the EMF over the equivalent resistance, which is 9 volts over 27 ohms, or 1/3 of an amp. All right, real batteries, being not ideal, have some internal resistance. In other words, it's not trivial for the charge to flow through the battery. And we can't directly measure that resistance because we'd have to sort of dissect the battery, and actually it's kind of also in the actual working chemistry. So it's resistance through the fluid flow in a wet battery, or that there's some impedance to charge flowing in the dry battery, but it's intrinsic to the battery. You can't really disassemble it. On the other hand, we can represent real batteries as being some EMF and some internal resistance, usually symbolized by lowercase r, because we're going to hope it's a small number. Not that it has to be a small number, but for a good battery, the internal resistance should be relatively low. Since we can't measure the resistance directly, we can't ever really measure the EMF ideally, because we only have access to these points. We don't have access to things in here. As such, we only access the terminal voltage, the voltage drop across the whole battery, not the actual EMF of it. On the other hand, most people will represent batteries as having just EMFs and having zero resistance. These are so-called ideal batteries. If it's not the case, then we have to take the chemistry would tell us we get a certain amount of EMF, but we lose some because there's current drawn through, and so the voltage drop across the battery, the voltage gain across the battery in this case is the EMF it's trying to lift up minus IR as it flows through there. Here's the magic trick though. We drew it like this, but now it's just a circuit, right? We don't draw the diagrams. And so this circuit is the same as this circuit, an ideal EMF, and then a resistance, which is the load on the circuit, plus the internal resistance. In other words, we have just chained these together and said, hey, they're in series, and so the actual equivalent resistance is R, little r plus big R. All right, so we have a 6 ohm bulb attached to a 3 volt battery whose internal resistance is 1 ohm. To be honest, this is a very high internal resistance. This battery is not long for the world. Find the terminal voltage of the battery. What is the voltage that you would measure across the 2 bits? So we begin with that the equivalent resistance, because remember our battery is, or our circuit now is ideal EMF internal resistance little r, external resistance r, and so the equivalent resistance is just the sum of those two things, which is 1 ohm plus 6 ohms, or 7 ohm, sort of duh. So the current being drawn is the EMF, the ideal EMF, over this equivalent resistance, or 3 volts over 7 ohms, which is nothing nicer than 3/7 of an amp. And then we know that the voltage across the battery, well, that's going from here to here. This path is going to be, we gain the EMF and we lose I times the resistance of the battery. So it's going to be something like 3 volts minus 3/7 of an amp times 1 ohm. So it's going to be 18/7 of an amp. Notice that the battery consumes something like 15% of the EMF that's available, that is not therefore available to the rest of the circuit, and therefore has lowered the current and so on by that amount. This is what happens to batteries as they age. The internal resistance grows, and so although their EMF stays basically constant, their available terminal voltage drops and drops and drops and eventually becomes less useful. Modern batteries are engineered that this happens very, very slowly and then usually all at once. So the battery stays at a relatively constant voltage, and then when it's reached the end of its life, it collapses. All right, just to formalize these things and put them together, assume the battery whose EMF is E and whose resistance is little r is connected to a circuit whose resistance is large R, that's the so-called load. Then the equivalent resistance is, of course, just their sum, and the current out of the battery is the EMF over the sum of their resistance. So the terminal voltage would be less because it'd be E minus IR, E minus E over the sum times little r, and then you can do some rearrangement and find the terminal battery's terminal thing is the EMF times the load over the internal resistance plus load. I don't know if that was particularly useful. I wouldn't commit them necessarily to memory, but know where they come from so you can solve problems with them. All right, if we connect the terminals of an EMF source with ideal conductors, that means there's no resistance in them, then we create a short circuit. It looks something like this. And notice there are no resistors on that circuit. If the EMF source is ideal, the current would be infinite because it'd be E over 0. Real EMF sources, of course, have some internal resistance, so the short circuit current is really something like E over lowercase r over the internal resistance. But remember, the internal resistance will tend to be tend to be small, so the current will tend to be very, very large. This is the most current that the EMF source could ever provide, right? That's the highest possible current you can pull out, and all the power dissipated will be done in the EMF source, which often can't handle it. Notice, if you remember, that the power is going to be the EMF squared over the internal resistance, and this number will be very small, so the power will be very large. It will dissipate a lot of energy very quickly, which will basically very much heat the battery and cause it to maybe explode or to burst into flame, which is why you shouldn't connect short circuits. All right. The device that measures current is called an ammeter. Notice it's not an amp meter. It's very common for students to say, well, I'm measuring amps, let me call it amp meter. But that makes you look silly, so don't do that. It's an ammeter. And we'll discuss how you measure current later. It turns out that there's a bit of magic that has to go on. We have to do some magnetic stuff. It's not easy to measure current without using magnets. For now, we'll just have it as a black box, and most importantly, we'll keep in mind that it must be placed in the current it's going to measure, so it must be in series with all of the elements that you're trying to measure. All right, so if we want to measure the current in this thing, we have to actually put the ammeter in the current, so it's in series with this resistor. I think it's pretty clear that that means we want the resistance of the ammeter to be small, so that it has very little effect on the equivalent resistance, right? Because remember, of course, the equivalent resistance is going to be the actual resistance plus the resistance of the ammeter. So we want this to be small so that these are almost the same. The larger the ammeter, the more you're disturbing your current. You're not really measuring it, you're affecting it. We'll see later that the voltmeter, on the other hand, needs to be put the other way and needs to have large resistances. But we'll come back to that later. Most importantly, right now, focus on ammeters need to be in the flow and therefore need to be low resistance.